TheAngryHoneyBadger.
Hey everybody, it is the Angry Honey Badger here. Today we'll be taking a look at a build for Tahm Kench. Kench is a champion that when released, I think quite a few people were not exactly sure how he was going to be utilized and weren't exactly sure how to do that too. Over time though, we've seen him kind of fall into a couple different roles, mostly as a support for sure, which is kind of how he was designed, and as a ridiculously annoying beefy top laner. And he's even beefy as a support too. So that's just Tahm Kench in general. We're going to talk about his build today as a top laner. We're going to talk about runes and masteries and of course the maxing order you're going to want to do when you are playing him. And the first thing we'll start off by doing is I'll show you a picture of his masteries and his runes down below, and you can take a look at that and pause the video and take a closer look if you need to. But for now, let's get rid of those and take a look at a gank on Kale. We're gonna have our Graves jungle come in. As we know, Graves jungle incredibly strong. Love it to death. We're gonna go ahead and eat her to get her away from the turret. She's gonna flash, but Graves will flash and pick up the kill, and we'll get an assist. Always make sure that you punish people who overextend early. This is something I try to do every single time I play top lane, regardless of the champion I'm playing, unless I'm playing someone so aggressive that I know I can get first blood by myself. But typically, I let the wave push against me, and by the time your jungler gets to the top side of the map, they can walk into lane for an easy gank. That's a very long distance for any laner to travel across to run back into the safety of their turret. So Kale is majorly overextended, and you just got to be aware of that. So once you're overextended, obviously throw wards out in the river. Make sure that you're keeping yourself safe. She's actually going to put another one out there because she's a little afraid, but don't be afraid of letting them push into your turret if you don't have good escape, or if you're not confident in like that you're going to be getting ganked. It's always better to just have people push against you most of the time, unless you can create the pressure and you're not too worried about it. At this point, I mean, as Tahm Kench, you're pretty beefy. Getting away is a possibility. You have plenty of slows and ways to really disrupt people when it comes to those things. But for now, let's just go ahead and talk about his abilities just for a second. So at level 1, we're going to put a point into our Q ability. This, of course, is our Tongue Lash. As we know, Tongue Lash is going to do a good amount of damage, and it is going to slow them for 2 seconds as for a percentage based on, you know, how many points you've put into it. We're going to be maxing out our Tongue Lash. First, it's a good way to pick up CS and harass. Sometimes in matchups such as this one, she does have, in theory, a little bit of a lane advantage over me and can poke me down. I've kind of displayed a little bit of dominance in the lane, so she's actually playing it quite safe, which makes the lane even easier for me. It helps keep Kale safe, too. She's probably a little paranoid of the Graves ganks again, too, because that one came so early. But at this point, we're just going to farm up and harass with our Tongue Lash. At level 2, we're going to put a point usually into Devour. This is our W ability. Now, Devour has its 2 main purposes of consuming an enemy once you have the 3 stacks on them, which you can see with the fish. When you have attacked them 3 times or attacked them twice, got Tongue Lash on them, whatever. Also, Tongue Lash will stun if we do have those 3 stacks of our passive on them. Which is Acquired Taste, if you didn't remember the name of it. So once they have 3 stacks on them, we can consume them with Devour. Our movement speed will be really ridiculously cut down, but we'll do quite a bit of damage to them once we spit them out. It's a good way to kill people. It's also another good thing where you can just eat your allies with Devour and keep them safe. As a top laner, I sometimes forget about this because you're typically not using it in a defensive manner. You're using it in an offensive manner to eat them, or eating a minion and spitting it at them. So there's multiple things you can really do with Devour. We're going to be maxing this out second because we want the increased damage on it. We also want the cooldown of it to come down because it's got a lengthy cooldown of 14 seconds. We'll get it down to 10 once we put our 5 points into it, and then a little CDR isn't too bad either. Then at level 4 or 3, depending on where you want to put a point into this, we're going to put a point into Thick Skin. Now, Thick Skin is, in my opinion, the part of Tahm Kench that is the most overpowered. And some people might be a little confused by that. I also think his Devour is incredibly strong, too. We're going to go ahead and Devour right now and spit a minion at Kale. We have Graves coming up from the river, but we're getting into the fight first. We're just going to go ahead and get safe and pop our Thick Skin, which we've got 1 point into at this point in the game. And that will give us that shield. Now, if we wouldn't have popped it for the shield, we would regenerate some of that gray health back as just health towards us. So there's 2 things you can do with it. You can either get incredibly low, and if you're free and you know you're going to be safe, you can then wait the duration of time to get that shield to come back as health, that gray health. Or you can activate it and you can get that shield, which they'll have to rework their way down back to your normal health and then try to kill you. I think Thick Skin's one of his strongest things, because if he does get caught out and it looks like he's overextended in some cases, the enemy team can keep focusing on him and his gray health. But if your team's coming in to then come help, you can then activate your Thick Skin and get all that to turn into that shield, and they basically have to do all that work over to you again. So that's why we build him incredibly tanky, because that makes him even harder to kill. And it makes him borderline the very best frontline tank in the game, right next to Mundo, I'd say, because Mundo can just regenerate his health so fast. But Tahm Kench, I think this is probably the first thing. If they really wanted to take some beefiness out of him, they need to nerf this. And if they want to take some damage out of him, they need to nerf, obviously, his Devour. And then finally, we'll talk about his ultimate for a second, his Abyssal Voyage. Honestly, I don't use this very often. I just used it there to cut someone off, but they had died by the time I cut them off. But anyways, passively, Tahm Kench's basic attacks, Tongue Lash and Devour, they deal bonus magic damage based on a flat amount and a percentage of bonus health. This is another reason why you build him tanky. You get all this extra damage from bonus health that you have, so getting as much on you is a good way to get more damage. And more damage on a super tank, it just means they do more damage than you'd ever expect for someone as tanky as they are. So that's your Abyssal Voyage. Obviously points in it at 6, 11, and 16. No surprises there. Now when it comes to the build, there's 2 different routes at the beginning of the game, and we've gone with one of those different routes, obviously, the less often taken path, which was, of course, a Spirit Visage as our first item. Now, the reason why we went with that is we were going up against a pretty heavy magic damage dealer. Kale, pretty hybrid actually, but the magic damage amount that she will do to us is pretty high, so we went with that first. Obviously, with the Spirit Visage, we get some nice things from it. We get the magic resist. I do like the cooldown reduction. Never a bad thing on any champion, as we know. And then we do get the increased regeneration effect from its unique passive, which on our health, if our Thick Skin then activates, or we don't activate it and we just let it tick back to being our health, we're going to get 20% increased regeneration, which is always, in fact, a good thing. We like that. It is a good thing. And in future purchases coming down, it's going to be even more beneficial to have that Spirit Visage. If we wouldn't have been in this matchup and we didn't need a magic resist item first, we would typically be building something else with health, but probably with some armor to negate some damage from our laner. And there's two cases for this, for that first item. You can either go with a Sunfire Cape, which can be very effective. Very good item. I like it a lot. I actually just got a small buff in patch 6.1, depending on when you're watching this video. Maybe it's been nerfed since then, but maybe not. The Sunfire Cape, which is what we've gone with this match. And the other really good choice, and we're actually going to be picking one of them up because it's just a good item at a good price, and it's very effective on Tahm Kench, is going to be the Dead Man's Plate. Both of them are very good. They're going to give us a good amount of armor, a good amount of health, and unique passives that are beneficial in different ways. Obviously, I like Sunfire because as a frontline tank, when you are standing in the middle of a battle taking that damage, it's good to be dealing damage back to the enemy champions for a good amount of time, because your duration that you're inside that fight usually is pretty long when you're a tank. So if you can do that passive damage from the Sunfire Cape to enemies that are around you, it's always good, just doing that bonus damage to anybody around you. So we are going to be picking that up. Obviously, the Dead Man's Plate is different and good in other ways, where you get Crushing Blow, where your basic attacks discharge that momentum, dealing those damage based on the stacks. If you're at 100 stacks, obviously it's discharged, the damage is doubled and the target is slowed by 75%, so you get another slow. It's also just your momentum also gets faster, which is another way to kind of engage or get into position, which is always a good thing. Now, I will say, if you're watching this game incredibly close, there are a few mistakes I make, which we'll get to one coming up, where I don't devour an ally. And like I said, I was thinking more offensively instead of defensively. If I was off support, I'd almost 100% of the time be eating allies instead of eating enemies or eating minions to spit at enemies. So make sure your head is on straight, which mine wasn't this game, although we're kind of destroying them most of the time, to saving your allies with Devour. It's a really effective thing to do. Also, when you do that too, you're going to be getting that increased movement speed when you eat an ally. I know you get crazy decreased speed when you eat an enemy, which makes sense. If you ran away with an enemy too fast, that'd be insanely broken. It'd be like a Skarner ultimate, but better, and on a less than 10-second cooldown with 5 points into it. So that would be super broken. Super broken. So let's talk about those items again. So we have the Sunfire Cape and we have the Spirit Visage. Those first 2 items give us plenty of health to help give us extra damage and survivability. And then for our boots this game, we decided to go with Ninja Tabi. You could go with Merc Treads. You could go with Boots of Swiftness. I've seen actually quite a lot of boot choice difference at the beginning of this season. It's just because I think there's actually multiple viable boot options at the moment. Ninja Tabi were helpful because they have a Xin, they have a Talon, they also have, don't they have a Lucian, I believe? So I was going to be taking tons of autos, let alone they had a Kale. Kind of hybridy once again. So taking some decreased damage from her Righteous Fury auto attacks would be a pretty nice thing to have. Not too worried about the rest of their team. No crazy magic damage, so didn't really need Merc Treads, and they didn't have tons of CC. They still have CC, but not tons. Here's a mistake. Here's where I don't eat Graves. But to be fair, we did kill him, and then Xin kind of showed up. If Xin wouldn't have shown up to finish off that kill, then he would have lived. But that was me thinking, hey, we'd just kill Talon instantly and be fine. But needed to think more defensively there to save our jungle ADC's life. So did that there. But going on to those next items, we picked up another giant spell. At this point, I am going to be building that Dead Man's Plate. I do like it for the momentum. I like it for the armor, which once again, as we've prioritized the Ninja Tabi, we need more armor because like we're going to be taking is more physical-based damage this game. Now, if you were going to be taking more magic-based damage, you might want to go with a Banshee's Veil next. If they had like a 4 AP heavy comp, let's say they had a AP Malphite top or a Malphite, you know, not going to really do tons of physical damage unless he builds physical damage. And then they had an Ahri mid, they had an Elise jungle, and let's say they had an Annie support. Obviously, their front line's terrible if that was a real team comp, but you would want more magic resist against that team, and so you'd want to probably pick up a second magic resist item instead of 2 back-to-back armor items like I have this game. So it's just something you need to remember if that's the way it's going to be going. And then as another item to get after that, and you'd be about rounding your build out at that point, the final item, and you can even get it sometimes earlier if you wish, but just make sure that you're going to be at least at 300 health or 3,000 health once you finish the item, is going to be the Warmogs. So Warmogs, as we know, is ridiculous. It does give you 850 health. You get tons of regeneration from it, and you have the Warmogs Heart passive once you have 3,000 health, where you can regen a crazy amount of health back per second and basically step out of a fight for about, oh man, I think once you're out of combat for 8 seconds, it regens quick. So you step out of combat for about 10 to 15 seconds, you'll be back at full life. It's almost better than the fountain does at healing you. So the Warmogs Armor is going to be an effective last purchase, which will increase your health by a lot too. So that is what you would consider to be your final item. We're going to be building that next in this game. So we have like our 3 core items. Now, if you're in a lane where you want to be building more offensively, there is kind of one option for that, and you can build the Titanic Hydra. It is a good option because it does give you health and it does give you some damage. If you want to have a little bit of damage, let's say you had a very tanky team composition and you had a Braum in the bot lane and you had a somewhat tanky jungle like a Mundo, you guys are going to probably lack a little bit of damage. That would probably be a good thing to get. If you do want to just be stickier to people and really be able to consume them and slow them, a Frozen Mallet could be something you could consider because you will be getting more attack damage from that, and you'll still be getting health and the slow, of course. But if you want to just help your whole team out, a Locket of the Iron Solari is a good way to round out the build. You'll get a little bit more cooldown reduction in health, and you'll get to help out your team. So Tahm Kench is a very strong champion right now. Pretty simple to play, too, since he's so tanky. So I suggest you try him out, and I'll see all of you in the next build video.